I appeared as crazy most of my corporate career to everyone else. So what you see now in like how people show up in corporate America, and it's about me and my work-life balance, and I'm not doing things that aren't aligned with my life and my like that. I was that person almost 10 years ago.
It taught me how courageous I was to make a pivot, because most folks don't make a pivot because they're afraid of what might be on the other side. I wasn't sure what was going to be on the other side. I tried to predict. I tried to control.
Just sitting in that fear, you'll be like, okay, I got to go back and get a good job.
We're talking about personal and professional pivots. Welcome back to Since Monday, the podcast that turns your Mondays into a launch pad for purpose, passion, and personal growth. I'm Jamila, here with my wonderful co-hosts, Dana Marie and Candace. Thanks for joining us for another inspiring episode. Today's episode is all about personal and professional pivots. We're going to explore some bold moves and some significant decisions that can redefine your personal and professional journey. If you've ever thought about changing your path or starting a new venture even, this is the episode for you. We're also going to be tackling our Monday myths as per usual. And this time we're also going to share a little incredible story that you might be interested in hearing about someone's courageous pivot in life. So without further ado, how are you ladies doing today?
Listen, when you hit us with that purpose, passion, and personal growth, I was like, come on, 3Ps.
Come on.
Come on, 3Ps. You better 3P us. I'm doing great. How are you?
I love it. And I love a good acronym or a good framework. So yeah, and those are the things that I know equally we're all eager to talk about for ourselves personally, but also to help inspire others, whatever age group that might be. But I'm doing amazing. How about you, Dana?
Absolutely amazing. I'm here with my sisters. I mean, what else could it be?
What else?
You got the sun shining. You bring it my way every single time we get together. It's a party. Let's go.
Let's get it. Let's absolutely get it. So we're talking about personal and professional pivots. So I want you all to share, whether it's personal or professional, one pivot in your life that you've made that honestly has you here today, that someone may be able to take a nugget from and find the courage for themselves to make the pivot.
Dana, you want to go first?
Yeah, for me, the biggest, most impactful pivot that I've made was from employee to entrepreneur. It's interesting because I was talking to my daughter about this the other day, and she was just sharing like, so mommy, what made you leave corporate? And she doesn't even realize like it was because of her.
Oh, wow.
So I had to, take her back to the story. I'm like, girl, you used to cry going into daycare. And I just had to make this pact with you that, if you would just do this for now, by the time you reach high school, that mommy was going to be home. And that's the promise that I kept. So by the time she was going into high school, I was like, okay, it's been 10 years on this corporate job. It's time for somebody else to take their turn. And I'm going to take my seat somewhere else. So that was probably the biggest pivot for me. Of course, going into entrepreneurship, you don't know everything. So that's a deeper level of the pivot. But we'll start there.
And that's a super big commitment that you made, that I know you're a woman of your word. You're gonna, like, if you put something out there, I knew it was your mission, while she might have not even understood what you were saying at the time, and you had to remind her that you were gonna hold true to that. But talk a little bit, before we switch gears to Candace, talk a little bit about the emotions that you were feeling, because I've watched the video that you shared on your social media, and I was like, whoa, if that makes sense, because a lot of people have a lot of trepidation about making that shift. And so you hear these stories online on YouTube and podcasts about how people make that jump. And I don't feel like yours was anything like the quote unquote norm. So I'd love for you to share kind of some of the emotions you were feeling during that time.
Oh man, if I can just go back to the past, for a minute, of course, I was feeling of mixed emotions: excited, nervous, unsure, confident. All of those things were like mixed in the pot. I had always been in corporate, but I always had a side hustle, right? And I had the conversation probably 6 to 8 months before I left corporate, even though I knew, what my deadline was going to be for me, because I had worked the 10 years for that deadline almost to the date. But I had the conversation with my husband. I was like, listen, I can't do this anymore. And we talk a lot about, God's timing. God had made it so uncomfortable for me in corporate. I had no choice but to leave. It was not go find another corporate job. It was, this is not the place for you. This is not where I can do my work through you, and it's time for you to go. I was absolutely miserable, and I was making the people around me miserable because I was miserable. So my emotions were just all over the place. In that video, you can see like I'm just excited. I'm happy the day has come. I handed in my resignation. I gave them 2 weeks, which I don't recommend doing that. Just leave. But that was then. That was then. I was nervous because now, I got to make decisions. And also looking back, I started, really wondering how well was it playing? But again, none of it was like a well-oiled machine. A lot of it was step out on faith and believe that you could walk on this water, girl. So the emotions that you see in that video was so raw. I started crying because I knew that I didn't get there by myself. I had to lean on some people, to help me get there, the conversations I had to have in preparation for leaving. But it honestly was the biggest and the best pivot that I have ever made to date. It made me hustle harder, if that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense. And I appreciate you sharing that, the mixture of emotions. And then I think what underscored in what you just said for me was that there wasn't like this direct script. And I think oftentimes in life, that's what we desire is A, B, C, D, because honestly, that's how we come into the world. It's A, B, C, D that our parents are telling us about. Okay, you do this, then you do this. You put your sock on, you put your shoe on, you tie your shoe, and then you do the other one, and then you go outside, and then it's just we're used to steps. And so when you have this kind of abstract thing about, you've been told this is the way to go for decades, and now you've got this gumption to do something different. There's no script, and everybody's different. And that faith is what carried you and still carries you to this day. So that's awesome. Unbelievable. I'm going to link to that video in the description so people can go check it out because it's so inspiring. It's so inspiring, though. It's so inspiring.
The passenger seat, that thing is truly inspiring.
It really is. So, Candace, share your major pivot, or personal or professional, that you feel like was a big part of what got you here on this day.
Absolutely. And no one knows the story like you, Jamila. So I'm going to try to compact 4 years into 4 minutes.
Okay.
Before I do, though, I want to go back real quick to Dana's video, because I know in another episode we had talked about, what drew me to her. And so just going, because, if I'm getting to know you, I'm also going to go look at your social media. Okay. You do it. I'm just willing to admit it on camera. Okay. And I saw that video and I was just like, oh my goodness, where was she when I was like, not even realizing how I felt in my moment like that. You modeled something in that video that yelled out freedom. It was so loud. Like the freedom of it all was so loud to the point where you were like sitting in that. I could always remember you sitting in that passenger seat. Like, I can't even drive off, y'all, because I feel free. What did you say? You were promoted? No, what did you say? J-O-B, just over broke. You just quit your J-O-B. So I wanted to just highlight that real fast because it was another confirmation for me of, okay, God, you're telling me more reasons why this is someone who needs to be in your immediate circle. Because when you think about who we need to be in relationship with, we need to be in relationship with people who are going where we're going, who have been where we're going, right? And ready to love, learn, and launch alongside you, in the words of Jay Shetty, right? So that was another confirmation of like, this is a God thing, because this is exactly, what we embody it, obviously 5-minute career hack, but then even in life and leadership of like, we just want to be free. So pivot to my freedom, because the Freedom and Peace Tour, where you want me to start, Jay? The Freedom and Peace Tour, this ain't that kind of show.
That is for Since Monday After Dark.
This not a freedom and peace tour type of show. Okay. You have mentioned, and y'all know how my brain works. So I am very like, logic. It's got a math. The math got to be mathing. How can I practice this? How can I apply? Like, I'm constantly doing that. And so I am a very sequential person, I think. Usually, like it's got this, then this, then this, then this. So back in 2020, I was making a decision to pivot in several areas of my life. And, that was my family dynamic with my immediate family, with my blood relatives, with my kids, with my job, the relationship I had with my job, and then several others in my life, but even making a pivot in the way that I was in relationship with myself was the big pivot of 2024. So I was like, I'm going to change jobs suddenly. Oh, I want to start a business. I want to get a divorce. Oh, I want to move states again. Oh, I want to change the way I parent my children. I want to change the way I love myself. All those pivots were happening
At the same dang
talk
time.
about rip upside down. Be out of your comfort zone of being this sequential person in the name, what I was declaring was my peace and my freedom. And so that led to actually where I am today. But it wasn't just like, oh, I decided I was going to do these things. And then now all of a sudden I'm healed and delivered in the name of Jesus. It wasn't like that at all. But it was the start of a journey that I now know that I will be, in forever. And that's embracing what's right in front of me, keeping my peace and my freedom at the forefront of my life and my decisions. And then, I wrote this article called Breaking Free, but I think now I have a better understanding of like that freedom and peace I was seeking when I was ripping my life apart in 2020. I have a better understanding of its ties to my upbringing, to the trauma that I was holding in my body that was keeping me in places that made me feel like I didn't deserve or need to pivot. And then to be worried about what people thought about the way I was pivoting, because your girl was stepping over every block. It was a lot of water in between those rocks. You know what I'm talking about? I could have failed. It's can y'all
I got a visual.
Yes.
I got a visual.
Yeah. And I had to be where I was worried about what everybody would think because it just wasn't aligned with cultural and societal norms or family norms or what folks would call success. So to me, obviously it was scary if I'm going to be, honest and vulnerable, but I had to even deal with knowing that to other people, it looked crazy as hell.
Right.
Right. And I was still attached to what other people thought about it. So it made my pivot, like it was like spotlights, like it was a whole movie out here. Jay was there. It was a whole movie, but I'm so grateful for it because it allowed me to remove things from my life that were holding me back in my healing journey. It was holding me back in my professional life. It was holding me back in my relationships. It taught me how courageous I was to make a pivot because most folks don't make a pivot because they're afraid of what might be on the other side. I wasn't sure what was going to be on the other side. I tried to predict, I tried to control, but I didn't know what the heck was going to be on the other side of that pivot. And I think that's important, whether it's career, whether it's business, whether it's a life pivot. And Jay, you spoke this over me as we talked in many conversations. It was more about the process than about the outcome because you really just don't know what the outcome is going to be. You can say, oh, I'm going to go get these certifications and make these moves, but you don't know that you're going to get the job just because you got the certification. So it's more about like, I got an opportunity. I didn't know it then because I was being all fleshly and carnal, but I got an opportunity afterwards to reflect back on it and really just be appreciative of the process. As hard as some of it was, I had to be appreciative. So I'm not even sure I remember what the question was. It was about
You nailed it. You nailed it.
It was about a pivot.
Yes, ma'am. You nailed it. As per usual.
Sis pivoted. Okay.
If there's a picture in the new modern day Webster's Dictionary of pivot, you've got a posted up picture right there next to it.
Pivoted.
And what you're probably one of the most courageous persons I know, because what most people would do over a decade, even if not 2 decades, you literally ripped that bandage off of so many areas of your life in one, just one. It wasn't, let me take this one off, and then and then let me take this. No, you ripped everything off at one time. And I'm on the phone, if you will, on the other side of the country, overwhelmed. There were so many conversations we would have, and I'm trying to be encouraging and supportive and all this other stuff. And I had to go lay down. There was so many of those conversations. I was just laying down because I was woe out with everything that you were doing. Because it was just like, man, how in the world? And I also personally had to fight the urge to be like, man, maybe you need to wait on that, right? And I'm going to tell you, the one that got me was, and it was some of my PTSD, was when you decided to move from, I think it was Memphis, to where you are now.
Yeah.
I was like, man, that's a lot. This is what I'm saying in my head. That's a lot. Like, and with the work we've done, those moves are, man, they are so tough on you physically, mentally, even emotionally. When you move like that for your career, it's tough. And so I'm like, man, you just went through this, and now you about to pack up and move? Where? What? When? And I had to fight the urge to be like, whoa, chill. Like, maybe you wait till next year. I had to fight that urge, and I'm so happy that I was able to be obedient in that moment, because all those pivots, the way you did it, and I'm not saying, disclaimer, I'm not saying everybody got to do it that way. Everybody ain't built like Candace, let's be clear. But it was the way you needed to do it in that season.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I just had to be a support and get out of God's way for what he had for you. So I think that's an awesome pivot. And I feel like for both of those pivots that you all just shared, we're going to probably have to revisit in a later episode and dissect, because there was just so much to dissect, because there's this intersection of personal and professional that I don't believe is separate. That's my philosophy on it. I don't believe if you're operating as the person you should be operating as, there's no way to separate the two. You're taking some of your personal, if not all, and you're taking some of your professional back to your personal space. So, hey, if that's a tip or not, I hope you grabbed it.
Personal. This is business and personal. Put that on the
It is. So I'll share my pivot. And as you all were talking, I was like, man, we kind of went with the professional one, so I'm gonna stay there. Although there's another one I want to share on the personal side in another episode, but I'll share my personal pivot. For me, I believe God has blessed me, since I can remember, with the ability to kind of see certain things about where I'm going before I get there. I don't necessarily know what it looks like, where I'm gonna be, but I can kind of see, like, this is what's coming, and I begin to talk about it. And I've done that on so many things. I have evidence, right? Got history with this. And so the pivot that for me was when I left corporate America as well in 2018. But I knew in 2016, before I accepted my last role with Dollar General, I had taken a 2-month break from Ross Dress for Less, which is where Candace and I met. I took about 2 months off before I started my next role on purpose. I wanted a break. I wanted to hang out for the holidays, chill, something we didn't get to do in retail. So I took 2 solid months off. I negotiated a sign-on bonus, equity, and all that. So for those career hackers listening, be sure you take some time off, because taking a sabbatical, a leave of absence, they just don't happen often in your professional career when you're working in corporate America. So here's a great opportunity during a holiday season for me to take a couple months off. So I did. And I didn't do a ton other than try to work out. I was very interested in real estate at that point. So I was looking at buying a rental property. And I just took the 2 months off, almost to the point where I almost did not show up for that first day of work. Because the piece that came over me during that 2 months, I was just, I don't want to do this. I even took a couple interviews that first week. I think when I came on board, we had some type of meeting, beginning of the year meeting or something like that. I was still taking interviews during the week while we're at the session and stuff. Like, I was different than anybody else in the corporate space at the time. And Candace mentioned,
about it. Man,
I appeared as crazy most of my corporate career to everyone else. So what you see now in like how people show up in corporate America, and it's about me and my work-life balance, and I'm not doing things that aren't aligned with my life and my like that. I was that person almost 10 years ago, right? And so I was showing up as that person a long time ago. So I appeared to be crazy. Most people thought I was crazy, like I was off my rocker. That's kind of the feedback that I used to get. Let's just be clear. I got it written down. I've got that feedback.
Dang, why she say that to them? I go back now like,
It
man,
needs to be said.
I wish I had said what she said. Now I'm saying it now. Look.
Right. So a little ahead of my time in that way, to the point. And so I knew before I started that last role that I was leaving. So I showed up with that agenda. And I was talking to the team that I had at the time. I think I had like 12, 13 district managers that I was responsible for. My first meeting was, I told them why I was here and what I needed to accomplish for myself and for them. And one of the things was I wanted to get every last one of them a pay raise. That was one thing I wanted to do. But I only have a short window to do that in. I want to help you with your personal brand so that when I leave, you can still kind of navigate, whether it's here, Dollar General, or somewhere else. I said, so that's what I'm committed to. We ain't talk about stores. We ain't talk about bathrooms. We ain't talk about outside the building. None of that stuff that happens in retail. We weren't talking about that. I told them, and I held true to that mission. So I consistently was telling them, I won't be here. And they used to laugh. They would laugh and be like, you ain't going nowhere. Da, 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 da. You going to be right here. We in this. You can't leave me. Da, da. I said, make sure you have your LinkedIn together because I won't be here and you need to have this footprint. Let me make sure I write a recommendation for you now because I might fall off the grid. Like you might not even be able to catch me in an email, right?
Right.
So that's literally that 18 months, 19 months, or however long it was that I was in this role. That's what I was doing. I was extracting the money to get them pay raises, all of them. I think I missed just one person before I just simply couldn't take it anymore and I quit. But I'm gonna tell you what did it for me is that we had this call, I think, and it was like all the divisional managers who I reported to, the regional managers, district managers on the call, and it's a audio call, and it had to start with everybody like this star whatever to mute everyone's mic. And the person leading the call says that it's going into the holidays. We're going to need you to work on Saturday and get into stores if you got to run a register and do all kinds of stuff that they wanted them to do extra. And then that part wasn't out of the norm. That's what that didn't do it for me. It's when he said, I'm going to take y'all off mute so y'all can just scream and yell and tell me how excited y'all are about this. And I was like, what?
You just told me you taking my time and I'm supposed to be excited about this.
Now, again,
let's reevaluate this situation.
The average person that's in that space, 99% of the people that were on that call understood what the ask was, probably even knew what it was before we got on there. So that wasn't the issue. We already knew, we probably gonna have to work a little bit extra, whatever. It's the fact that you tried to make me pretend and put on for you to help you digest it.
Right.
I was done. I think I was gone less than a week later. I put a bug in someone's ear to basically get me a nice parachute package out of the door because I know she was gonna run tell that, which she did. So they came to me with it the next week. But that was my pivot. I kind of knew ahead of time leaning into it, and I'd gotten my rental property that August, I think the August of that same year. So I'd had that for a few months, had no clue though. When I left, that was it. I didn't know that was it. I took some interviews because that's, as a new career strategist, a profession that I'm in now that I wasn't in at the time, I knew at that time that it was important to, still have options and still have opportunities and entertain those opportunities. And then one day, I'll never forget it. I did an interview. I think it was in Alabama. I had flown to Alabama, came back around 12 o'clock, took a shower, got into bed. I was tired, took what I thought was going to be a nap at 1 p.m. And I didn't wake up till the next day at 1. I slept for 24 hours straight. And as soon as I woke up, And I came to, and I understood that it was 1 o'clock the next day. I said, yeah, it's time for me to bet on me. And I had no idea what I was even saying, because that wasn't what I was thinking that was about to happen. And it's been almost, what is that, 6 years to the date? Almost 6 years in November for me. And again, you've just heard three totally different reasons, experiences, approaches to a major career pivot shift. Because I know for me, I've been told, most of my life, whether that was by parents, professors, whatever, mentors, that, this is the way to go, Jamila, you're on the right track, to then pivot from that and do something that is in another direction. Now, today's world, like, it's more palatable post-COVID, or I'm not even gonna say post-COVID because people still catch COVID, but post-COVID is more palatable to, you almost everybody's got a side hustle, and almost everybody's thinking about entrepreneurship, whether they're doing it or not. But 4 or 5 years ago, that wasn't the case. So you just heard 3 totally different approaches at different times to that pivot. So what follow-up thoughts you guys have? Because I know somebody was blessed by our stories, but what follow-up thoughts do you guys have on that as we wrap up this episode around pivots? Because that was personal and professional.
I was just listening to, Dana, when you shared. I thought back on what I shared, Jamila, listening to you. And yes, we made courageous decisions to bet on ourselves, but something just came over me of like, we decided to because we're all structured and sequential, and the math got a math, but it was just this decision to trust God, to trust ourselves with what he had given us. That is not, you couldn't have caught me back in 2014 making a decision to, I'd be out here talking about the Spirit of the Lord and stuff, but I had to actually believe it. And, it wasn't perfect either. I struggled, just questioning me and questioning God. But when I think back on our decisions to make those pivots, whatever the circumstance was that led us there, it still was a choice that we made. And it was a choice to trust God, a choice to bet on ourselves, a trust in just action in living what we were coaching people and telling them to do. Like, it was our decision. We got to go walk this thing, walking like we talk it. And that was kind of, that's just something going to hit me as I was listening. Like, man, talk about fruit and faith and all of that. Like, this was a testament of our faith and an opportunity for us to be examples to others that may be feeling what we was feeling. So thank y'all for sharing vulnerably. And there's more to the story, I'm sure, that we'll be talking about in later episodes.
It definitely brought me back to since Monday, right? How even that positioned us to be who we are together today. I think, looking back, while I kind of put it in the atmosphere that that's something that I wanted in 2008, 2007, 2008, I still wasn't sure what the path was going to be. I still wasn't sure, like, all right, you saying entrepreneurship, like, what does that look like, for you? But as I got closer to the time, and I'll be honest with you, I wasn't even really tracking it to like the date. It wasn't like something on a calendar, like by this date, you're going to leave, until I got really clear about what it was I had in position, the things that I wanted. And then these things became more clear to me. And it was just, in my case, ironic that it was 10 years in 2 weeks to the date that I actually started at that former company. And I looked back and I was like, oh, I wrote this in my journal. I wrote that in 10 years, I will be home with my baby, as she goes into high school. I didn't feel that my child needed me going through elementary school. I was like, you need your friends, right? You need to be social. But going into high school, I felt like she had those social skills, but she gonna need her mama to come and, come to those games when, she just want to make sure somebody is cheering for her. She gonna need her mama because she don't like taking the bus, to and from the game sometimes. After practice, you want to be there. Or even when she was just, coming home and needed somebody to download on. And I didn't want that to just be a phone call. Like, hey, mom, and then I got to cut her short, right? So looking back, I'm so grateful that even as mixed emotion as I was, and certainly probably a little bit more, even though I stepped out on faith, probably still a little bit more fearful than courageous because of the unknown, like the territories that I was, that unknown territory. Like we got real bills that need to, did you prepare enough? Right. And of course, going back to what you said, Jay, certainly on that, what we call 40-40-40 plan, right? You go to school and you get a good job and you stay on that good job for 40 years and then you retire 40% of your pay. And I just felt like that ain't going to work for my life or my lifestyle. Like I just cannot see myself giving up all of me to a company or a corporation or something that can just say to me one day, you know what? Thank you for the service. Here's your watch and we're going to let you go now. Right. So a lot of fear, but still having to find the courage in that fear to say, okay, God, I just trust you, wholeheartedly. And people will look at you crazy because when you got a good job, you got a good job,
Good job.
Oh,
You
my
got
good
that.
job.
You got that
Okay.
good job.
You look
You
crazy.
mean you could work
look
from
crazy.
home 3 days a week? You don't even gotta go in there. Like you got a good job. You got a
Right.
good staff. You got but see, this is the thing. This is what I was kind of alluding to in that video. It was time for me to give up that good position to go to greater things so somebody else can go from not really being good to good. It's sitting in that seat. That good job was for them. Let them be good at this. God is like, I'm calling you to great. Right. So I had that fear. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I can't, like you said, Jay, all right. Just sitting in that fear, you'll be like, okay, I gotta go back and get a good job. Gotta go back and get another good
Oh,
job.
I did it. I went back and thought I was getting a good job again.
Listen, y'all know I've had some side hustles, but the way that you hustle now is different than how you hustle back then.
Yeah.
Right? If you have to go back into a corporate type of situation, you hold different cards now, right? So I don't want our audience to think like you should not, if you need to, rely on other streams of income that may come from corporate. But make sure when you do that, you understand that you have a start date and an end date that you created, that you also understand that you are in a different position than the one that you walked in from. You're coming in based on your experiences. You're not new. Your expertise is valuable, especially post pandemic, right? So I know we're going to go back to this and talk a little bit more on the personal side of the pivot, but I just had to share, like, it wasn't all like just courage. Some part of it was, girl, are you okay? Right. And that excitement, because I get really excited and I could be my best cheerleader and the worst one too. I'm like, okay, did I really make sure things is in place? And double check, triple check, quadruple check, have somebody else check. They don't even know what they're checking for.
They don't even know.
But they're like, it look good. I think you're going to be okay. But I'm grateful that, having gone through those things, it builds a different level of muscle for you. So it's absolutely, and I know we talked primarily about our pivots out of corporates, and I don't want this to come about this, but it absolutely has to be an introspective decision, because if you let the outside world kind of dictate how you should make those decisions in any pivot, then you've forgotten what your pivot was for. It becomes everybody else's voices. So,
so basically dust yourself off. I think the Monday myth that I've heard through all three of our journeys that I hope the audience caught is that, number one, there's no script for this. There's no script for this. There's no song for this. There's no rhyme or reason to this. So whatever you're facing, whatever you're going through, whatever you're called to do, that's your journey. We just hope that you heard something in ours that can bless you and maybe help inspire you towards whatever it is God has for you. So I think that's number one. There is no way. So if somebody's telling you, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do that, I believe they're absolutely wrong. And the reason why I say they're absolutely wrong is because we were all individually created uniquely for a very specific thing on this earth. So I can't do it the way Dana did it. I can't do it the way Candace did it. I'm never going to get to the place that God has for me if I don't submit to what he has for me. So I feel like that's the myth that we dispelled this week. I'd love to hear from you, the audience, about that myth and maybe what you've learned and what you've experienced. Be sure to shout us out, whether that's on social media, and use the hashtag Monday Myths. And as we wrap up this episode and hopefully see you back here next Monday as we continue to focus on purpose, passion, and personal growth. We hope that this inspired you, and it's our pleasure to be here together. Whether we're in front of this mic or not, this is what it looks like at Sense Monday. So thank you all for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. Share it with a friend. Make sure you're subscribed and that you're following the podcast, and we love you.